Hi everyone, welcome back to Novel Nomad and welcome to my top 10 reads of 2017. Yes, this video was requested by Raissa, Pinto and Chloe Shard, so thank you so much to you two for requesting this video. And if you have a video you'd like to request for me to do, or have a really good tag that you'd like to see me do, tell me in the comments down below and I'll get to that as soon as possible. So for me, picking favourites is always really hard because I always see every book has its own quality and I have a different experience in reading them. So it's always a really difficult question and I'm always put on the spot when someone says, what is your favourite book? However, this year it was made a little bit easier for me because I chose the top 31 books I read in 2017, and I did that as a series on my Instagram throughout December last year. And if you want to see those pictures, I'll link my Instagram in the description box down below. But that really helped me narrow down to my top 10. And what I've done here is I've actually picked the top 10 per genre. I've actually narrowed it down to more of a genre base, so the top read in crime or the top read in historical fiction that I felt really spoke to me. So starting off, I'm starting straight into the non-fictions, and my favourite memoir or biography was definitely Lindy West's Shrill. This was really interesting because it went through her life as a young woman who's always having issues with her weight and how she's being viewed in her workplace, in society, but she was always heavily interested in the comedy circuit and how she was viewed as not only a woman but also a woman with weight, and how it's always like the funny fat girl and how she was viewed funny because that's all she, and how her weight was deemed acceptable because she was the funny one. Lindy's approach in this book is absolutely amazing because she not only is hilarious at how she writes, but she throws in a lot of pop culture references that thankfully it really spoke to my generation. Even though I believe she's about 10 to 15 years older than me, it was still something I could easily associate with. But the reason why this one is definitely going to be a top pick for me for 2017 is that it made me view how I viewed myself and other people, and especially how I viewed the media in their treatment of people who were different in some way, especially in body image and body positivity. It really spoke that accepting yourself and also accepting other people for who they are, regardless of race, culture, gender, religion, is that makes them a better person because they feel that acceptance and they feel that love. So it was a really wonderful book. It really spoke to me on so many levels and I can definitely recommend it. My pick for general historical non-fiction is going to be A History of Britain in 21 Women by Jenny Murray. Jenny Murray is a notable personality in Britain. I don't really know her that well, I had to look her up, but she chose 21 women who affected the history and the formation and the society of England along the way, and I found it absolutely fascinating. Many of the women who were chosen in this book I knew already, but the way Jenny Murray had approached their histories in her own personal context, how she viewed them as important and how she viewed their importance to her own career and her own life was really fascinating. So I think this is a really good one to recommend if you don't really like reading really heavy historical fiction text, but you would like to know a little bit more of British history or even women's history and women's place and how that has been changing and adapting over time, especially in the Western societies. This one is a really good book to pick up. Okay, so now we're moving into the fictional segment of my top 10 and we're starting with classics, and my absolute favourite classic last year was Bleak House by Charles Dickens. This monster of a book I finally got around to reading, and I think because I was so excited for it, I was pumped, I had prepared myself and I read it during Victober. I absolutely adored this book. The level of detail and thought put into the plot and characters and the significance and how they played in relating Dickens' ideas of class, society and especially criticism of the law was absolutely fantastic. I really recommend this for people who have read Dickens' shorter works and are a bit worried about the size. This one is amazingly well paced. It is a dual narrative between Esther Summerson in first person and also Dickens voice, I like to say it. It's a third person omniscient narrator, and the omniscient narrator is quite heavy in his prose, where you immediately switch over to Esther, and that is a very personal view of the story, as you view the story from a character within the narrative rather than just always on the outside. So it is really, really well done, and it's a fantastic Dickens because of course there's characters you love, characters you hate, and characters that are on the shady side of questionable. They're socially acceptable, but you don't like them anyway. So moving more into the modern classics, I chose The Blue Castle by Ellen Montgomery. Ellen Montgomery is the author of Anne of Green Gables, Emily of New Moon series, but Ellen Montgomery is having a lot of anniversaries coming up, so most of her books are being re-released. Blue Castle though is one of her more adult books, and it is set during the 1920s, so very different from the late 1890s of Anne's era. And this one is absolutely wonderful. You follow Valancy Sterling, who is a little lost in her own world. She's always done what her family want her to do. She's always stayed rooted back in the old hairstyles, the old fashions, because that's what her family have deemed her good at. She's never been considered pretty, she's never been considered accomplished, she's never been given room to grow. So this book actually has her striking out, wanting to be a different person because she discovers that she only has a year to live with her heart condition. So she decides to take life into her own hands and makes friends, makes new acquaintances, and makes a life for herself beyond the confines of her family house. I highly recommend this book for people who do love Anne of Green Gables because Valancy reminds me a little bit of Anne with a bit more of the melancholy of Emily. It is a good mix between the two. She's a really wonderful heroine, but it also has Ellen Montgomery's signature beautiful descriptions of nature. Ellen Montgomery had tapped into nature somehow in her youth, and it is so vividly described through her pen that you just feel like you are one with the Blue Castle. My top fiction pick for 2017 was The Tin Man by Sarah Winman. I have waxed poetic about this book many times, but I absolutely adored this book. It is very short, but it packs a powerful punch. It follows a man after the death of his wife and a best friend in the same car accident, and he goes through his memories of his wife and of his best friend. The man himself is bi. It views how love can change, destroy, hurt, and then heal as well. So love is heavily focused in this book, and the visual imagery is absolutely stunning. I would just recommend this to anyone. It is a slow read, but it is absolutely worth taking the time to completely immerse yourself in Sarah Winman's writing. So my top historical fiction pick is no surprise, I am sure, and that is going to be The Wild Air by Rebecca Muskell. This one is another slow read. It is set before and after World War I, and it follows Della Dobbs as she follows her passion for flying and becomes one of the first aviatrix, and how she pursues her passion even through wartime, and how a woman's place can change within a period of years after major upheavals. There is also a wonderful romantic element to this, but one of the main reasons I chose this for the historical fiction element of my top 10 is that Della Dobbs was an absolutely inspirational female character, but she did not feel removed from the era in which she was written, and her bravado and her passions really inspired you and really made you want to follow her story throughout the book. So it definitely ticked all the boxes for my definition of a perfect historical fiction. My number one crime book for the year was really hard to decide because I had read so many crime books throughout the year, not only with Kate Howe but also for Cloak and Dagger Readathon. It was quite difficult to narrow down which crime book really spoke to me. Now for this one, I didn't go with any of my classic favourites like Linley, Amelia Peabody, or any of those cozy series. I went with one that was a little bit different to what I normally read, and also was really invigorating and new and really made me look at crime fiction in a different light. And this one was The Dry by Jane Harper. The atmosphere and the complexity of the crime was absolutely fantastic. It is a very short crime novel, but it managed to pack the same punches of a a long, complicated thriller into a very short package. It is set in Australia in a contemporary setting, and reading it leading up to summer was absolutely fantastic because I completely understand the heat and desperation that this town was driven to. I would definitely recommend this one to anyone who's used to reading cozy crime or has never read an Australian fiction before. I think this is a really good introduction to classic Australian gothic and classic Australian crime, where it is a thriller with gothic elements of isolation. My favourite romance read for 2017 was Beard Science by Penny Reid. Penny Reid is a really fantastic romance writer. She writes smart romance, so the characters are very clever. They don't have to be dumbed down, they don't have to be purely driven by emotion, and often they have lives of their own and passions and things that they follow. This one follows Cletus, the third and quite eccentric Winston brother in the Winston Brothers series, while he gets blackmailed by the seemingly sweet banana cake queen that is Jen Sylvester. It is really funny to read their interactions, but it is also great to see this chemistry develop between two people who seemingly feared or ignored each other. I'd really recommend Penny Reid. She has the Knitting in the City series, which is absolutely hilarious, or she has the Winston Brothers series, which I personally love. You can get them in paperback and audio or ebook, but it is absolutely fantastic to have more depth and more complex writing within a romance book, so it is really well done. My favourite children's book of 2017 is going to be Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. This one received so much hype at the end of 2017. It was actually ridiculous how much hype this book received. Although whilst I didn't agree with it being labelled as the next Harry Potter, I have to agree that it has a certain element of magic and charm that just made it an absolutely fantastic read. I read it in 2 days. I was absolutely frantic to finish this book because once I started I just could not stop. I shared it with so many of my friends, and I really recommend this book, mainly because it has that wonderful whimsy that Harry Potter can bring, but also the writing is beautiful. It is absolutely remarkable writing and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it comes from an Australian author, which is fantastic for local publishing, but it is published worldwide, so if you want to pick up a copy I highly recommend. And the last book that is going to be on my top 10 2017 reads is my young adult pick, and that is A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. This is a fantastic book. Not only is it historical fiction, but it's a historical fiction written for a YA audience that maintains the historical integrity of the period. Characters don't feel totally removed from their historical period, but it is recognisably written for young adults, and it is absolutely fantastic. You follow Monty, who is actually bisexual, and he and his friend Percy and sister Felicity go on a bit of a romp around Europe, accidentally of course, and get into a whole lot of mischief. There is some fantastical elements in this, but how magical the characters are just gave way to accepting the fantastic elements within this historic setting. This one is a great standalone book, although there is going to be a second book following Monty's sister Felicity coming out soon, hopefully, and I'm definitely going to be picking that one up. But this is an absolutely wonderful book to represent diversity in YA literature, and it is coming from a historical background as well to show the issues that have been prevalent within society towards people of the LGBTQI community, and it is absolutely amazing. The author herself is bi, so she brings a very authentic representation to this book, and I just can't recommend it enough. If you really want to get into more diverse YA, definitely check this one out. Alright, so that is my top 10 picks for 2017. I hope you really enjoyed this video. Like I said at the beginning, if you have any recommendations or videos you'd like me to do, tell me down below in the comments, or if you have read any of these or want to know a little bit more, I'm very happy to talk about them in the comments down below. And honestly, I am just loving my reading at the moment. I'm being a true nomad as I jump from genre to genre, but I am still finding love and inspiration in all of these books. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Happy reading. Bye!